Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I turn your attention next to the story I was thinking of. Actually, oddly, remember that slightly weird thing I said to you an hour ago about dirty light and clean light? And sometimes you feel a certain reluctance in corners of the media to shine clean light on issues because people have shone so much dirty light on them. The best example, perhaps, depending on how you read the J report into the grooming gangs in the north of England, would be that, is that because far-right organisers sought to make so much out of that story, you could possibly make a case for arguing that other people who should have shone a light on it didn't. It's a fairly thankless task if you do. I did that before any other broadcaster in Britain. We were talking about those crimes, but of course, because I refuse to accept that every Muslim in the country is either a terrorist or a sex offender, it butters no parsnips at all with the kind of people that really, really, really care about women's rights and indeed about sex abuse when it's done by brown people. So in the last hour, if you think I exaggerate with this sort of thing, talking about the warning from the head of the British Army about Russia, quite a few people got in touch to tell me we've got nothing to fear about Russia. It's the Muslims we need to worry about. So that explains to you, it's that mindset that possibly sometimes just gives pause to decent people when they want to talk about Islam-related issues that I think do need a little bit more scrutiny. So, you know, on this programme we've never had any hesitation in making clear our opposition to face veils, our belief that they are, this isn't the debate that we're having, so don't ring in yet, the belief that they are medieval in their misogyny, but I have always had a much milder attitude to headscarves, hijabs, probably because I was taught by nuns until the age of 7. So for the first few years of my life, most of my major authority figures were women in headscarves. Margaret Thatcher, the Queen, and the nuns at the convent in Kidderminster. Times change, things move on. Nuns still cover their hair, but of course we now live in a country where many other people cover their hair for religious reasons that are not related to being a nun. Orthodox Jewish women quite often wear head coverings, hair coverings. You can't... I mean, Catholic women used to be supposed to cover their head when they went into church, and men were supposed to take their hats off. But I hate this story because I just think it speaks to all that is wrong with religious inculcation. 8-year-old girls, or primary school girls, but then again, on the other hand, what's the difference between a ban and an order? So what you have here is a school that has got a brilliant record. It's in Newham in East London, and before Christmas they imposed a ban on the Islamic headscarf in order, they said, to help younger pupils integrate into British society. That's just such a beautiful example of the problems we've got, isn't it? Because you can integrate into British society if you're wearing a headscarf. Seriously, ask the Queen. If you're wearing it for religious reasons, you still can. I saw some of the London University female rowing team yesterday on my way back from church with 2 bottles of whiskey poking out of my pocket. And I just, because I started looking out for these things, I never used to notice them, but 2 or 3 women in that rowing crew were wearing their hijabs. I'm fairly confident nobody gave a fig, but of course that's real life as opposed to reported life. I don't think girls... I mean, as I understand it, right, the whole thing about covering your hair is modesty. There's no Quranic instruction at all for anyone to do it, let alone children, but you're perfectly entitled to take your interpretation of modesty wherever you want. It's why I'm not sure the law has any place in even addressing issues like face coverings and full face veils. But if it's modesty, then it's linked to sexuality, isn't it? Can we agree on that? Phone lines are open, by the way. You know where we're going with this. 0345 6060973. Be nice to hear some female voices this hour after something of a dearth during last hour's military manoeuvres. If modesty is somehow linked to sexuality, isn't it? It just is, right? Why on earth would a child need to cover their hair? 0345 6060973. And given that you won't be able to really explain why a child should cover their hair in the context of modesty and or sexuality, what's wrong with the school banning them? They also banned fasting on the school premises during Ramadan. I'd remind you that this is a primary school. To me, that seems pertinent at this point. Because I could see how a 16-year-old might have a slightly greater claim towards autonomy. But given that I don't believe any woman wears the veil in an act of true freedom of choice, I probably would be rendering myself a bit of a hypocrite doing that. But I mention it because no one's going to claim that an 8-year-old is doing this through choice. No 8-year-old ever looks around at modern Britain and says, I feel really strongly that I want to cover my hair. It's coming from mum and dad. It just is, right? But how is a ban on them different? And this will be my question for you, because you know we never take the easy route if there's an absolutely torturous path presenting itself. Why would banning it, which this school has now undone, be any different from insisting on it? Riddle me that, will you? So, if you opened a school now and said that every child in it had to wear a headscarf, whatever their religion was, you would probably see the heads of various Fleet Street editors explode in a fit of faux pique. So, how then could it have been? And I missed this story before Christmas. I apologise. But how is it any different to banning them? If you say everybody has to wear one, or you say nobody is allowed to wear one, I just see them at this point in proceedings. It's 11:11 and the phone lines are open, but I see them as morally equivalent. 0345 6060 973. If you want to address that philosophical question, and I get that up front and centre because you don't need to belong to any particular religion to have a view on that. I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of ordering kids to wear them, but I'm intuitively comfortable with the ban because the kids are so young. So I think I possibly am indulging in a little bit of moral hypocrisy, which you're either going to prove or disprove by dialing 0345 6060 973. I don't know the school. There'll be people listening to this that have a personal connection with it. Of that, these days, we can be sure. But the chairman of the governors has resigned. And the school has now reversed its ban after speaking to the school community. One wonders whether a very vocal minority of parents have overseen this. That's often the way with these things. But more than 20,000 people had signed an online petition calling for the ban to be reversed. Calls for the head teacher, a woman called Nina Lal, to resign. And some fairly grim abuse being visited upon both the former chairman of the governors, Arif Karwi, and presumably Ms. Lal as well. Here's a good one. Shame on you, you dirty coconut. If God doesn't guide you, may he humiliate you and expose you, as he already has, the treacherous scum that you are. But bans, I don't know, bans offend some of our more secular sensibilities, I think, don't they? The idea that anybody has the... I'm very, very confused about this, is the short way of putting it, because every primary school in the country has uniform rules. You're not allowed to wear flipping Heelys to school, you know, the little pumps with the wheels in the heel. You're not allowed to wear jewellery at my daughter's schools. There's all sorts of rules in place. Some schools have very, very strict uniform rules. And just because this has a religious stroke cultural rationale behind it, I don't know that it necessarily... No, but then, you know, if it was a kid with cornrows, then I'd be on the side of that mum. This is fascinating to me, and the polar opposite, really, of the kind of treatment that stories like this ordinarily receive, because there's too much nuance. If I had to make the decision, if I was in charge, I'd ban the headscarf in primary schools, but I'd probably accept that I was going to indulge in a degree of moral hypocrisy when putting together my policy for secondary school. Tell me what you think. Tell me where you sit on this one. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. We'll start with that conflation of modesty and sexuality. Why on earth would anybody want a 9-year-old to wear a headscarf? Let's start with that, okay? 0345 6060 973. And if you don't like the ban, find another school. Is that fair? It's not, is it? Labour MP Khalid Mahmood confirms that there is no religious obligation to wear a hijab for young girls. There's no religious obligation to wear a hijab for any girls. And it's usually worn only after puberty. That is what worries me particularly about this story. You do it after puberty because you're linking modesty to sexuality. You do it before puberty, then you're linking sexuality to prepubescent children. There we go, we got there in the end. Surely this links sexuality to prepubescent children, and surely we can all agree that that is not something that should be given airtime. So, 11:15 is the time. Should primary schools be able to ban headscarves? 0345 6060 973. Should this primary school have reversed this ban after some fairly unpleasant pressure was applied to governors and teachers? And why on earth would a young woman who has not achieved puberty be required to somehow observe rules described as modesty? You can pick whichever one you want. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. And then, just as I thought my confusion couldn't get any more profound, of course, you bombard me with pictures of young people in turbans, in yarmulkes, and similar. So should a school be able to ban a garment that a child is wearing for what they believe to be religious reasons? I still say yes, but you'd have to ban everything then, wouldn't you? If you're not letting little girls wear hijabs, you wouldn't be able to let little boys wear turbans or yarmulkes. 0345 6060 973. I'll take anything you've got on this, because I mean, really see it as a much tougher topic than I realised. Mafar is in Chiswick. Mafar, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi James.
Hello, mate.
I'd like to throw a little bit of a spanner in the works.
No, please don't. It's already confusing enough, this one.
If I give you a little anecdote, I'm born and bred in the UK, from Slough. In my original school, Wexham Secondary, if I can give the name, which I have. So when I was young, there was only one girl in our whole school that wore a hijab.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to that school, everyone wears a hijab.
That's a secondary school.
Yeah, secondary school. I know children in that school that are non-Muslim that wear the hijab because out of fashion. My young daughter, she's 4 years old. She does not wear the hijab.
Seriously, out of fashion?
Out of fashion. My young daughter's 4 years old. She does not wear the hijab because I don't want her to wear the hijab at the moment.
Right.
I believe it's her wish. She wants to wear it when she's older. It's up to her. She wants.
So you'd never encourage or discourage, or would you just not insist?
No,
or right?
I would like her to wear a hijab, but
why?
To be honest, why? Religious reason why.
Well, no, that's not good enough. Why?
I'm not really fussed.
I'll make your mind up.
I'm not really fussed. No, I'm not really fussed. If she didn't wear a hijab, it's fine. My mum doesn't wear a hijab. My sister doesn't wear a hijab. My mum never wore a hijab. My sister never wore a hijab. My wife does wear a hijab. My two older daughters do wear a hijab because of my wife wearing a hijab.
So they follow their mum's example, which is fairly normal.
And that's what it's more to do. And nowadays, when I see girls wearing hijab, because the issue of the hijab was the issue of modesty. You'll get girls wearing a hijab, wearing tight clothes, wearing the latest fashion. That wasn't the intention of the hijab. Nowadays, for me, the way I see the hijab is it's a lot of fashion, especially here in West London. It's mainly fashion. It's not to do with religious. A lot of people don't even pray in their
I can't give you a towing for being confused, because I'm incredibly confused myself. But you have just said you'd like your daughter to wear one for religious reasons, and it's not really religion in the same breath.
Yeah, confusing.
Isn't it?
It is.
So that's why I then lean towards the primary school question. Why on earth would a kid who's years off puberty want to, or even think of, wearing a headscarf?
If I was to think of it as for my young daughter, I'd think it's more that she sees her mum, her sisters, elders.
Not at school, she doesn't. Not at primary school, she doesn't. So everyone else at primary school is observing the... No, I've banned them, mate. That's the whole point. No one at primary school is allowed to wear.
If you ban them, then she wouldn't see it that way.
That's what... Yeah, so... And you sound perhaps a little more measured than the people sending abusive messages to the headmaster of this. You'd be comfortable to send your little girl to a primary school that didn't allow her to wear a hijab? Or not?
I would be fine with it, but I think that's a bit of an odd place to send for them to ban it. I would fight against the ban, but I'll still send my child there not wearing a hijab.
Okay, yeah. Well, as I said, I've shot myself in the old foot on this one by being so confused in my introduction that I can hardly have a crack at people who are a little bit contradictory and confused as well. Such is the nature of the relationship between religion and secular society. Mafar, thank you, mate. A couple of phone lines free if you want to grab this one. 0345 6060973. It doesn't... I guess this is the real problem that we've got now with... sort of culture or multiculturalism, if you prefer that term, is that I can't imagine being alienated or in any way discombobulated by a woman wearing a headscarf. But I can, and I've admitted to you, particularly on the morning after the Manchester terror attacks, that when I saw a woman in a full face veil, I was profoundly discombobulated. I felt those little stirrings that would, if you didn't address them with reason and compassion, they could easily sort of blossom into bigotry and vileness. We've all got that capability within us. So some people presumably see a headscarf and feel those little seeds of bigotry and vileness sprouting. Do we really make the rules in order to cross our fingers and hope that people like that don't develop even more vile views? It just seems to me a little bit odd. And history suggests that if you kowtow to the people who are asking for these kind of policies, they come back and ask for more. They don't go away and say, yes, this is sadly the next chapter of Brexit, isn't it? Is if immigration is substantially reduced, whether by people choosing not to come here compared to the rest of Europe, or indeed by some form of regulation that prevents people from coming here, and people who are currently persuaded that immigration is the reason why their own lives haven't gone terribly well are going to wake up and realise their lives are exactly the same as they were before, arguably worse, but immigration has been reduced. Then what happens? I mean, that's my fear at the minute. Rosie's in Balham. Rosie, what would you like to say?
Oh, yes, hello there.
Hello, Rosie.
I didn't wear a headscarf because nobody in my family was forced to wear headscarves. I wore it myself.
Do you think many girls are forced to wear headscarves?
Maybe some girls are, but I want to say, James, that wearing a headscarf is not the end of the world, because you've got primary school children sending naked pictures to each other. That's sexuality, according to me. And if they're doing such thing, okay, they're not.
It's not either or, Rosie, and it's perfectly possible that some of the children sending naked pictures of themselves also wear headscarves. Yeah. So I really resist this sort of us and them type typification of stories.
I hope not. It's very much against my religion in my country.
But I don't think anybody listening to this hopes that children are sending selfies. Where things get dangerous is when you try to claim some sort of cultural immunity from the behaviour of young people. That way madness lies.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that wasn't your intention.
Okay, I'll tell you something. Little girls, some may be forced, but not all of them are forced. Little girls copy their mothers. I think you'll agree with that. They want to wear lipstick. They want to wear high heels. It's just like that, copying.
I mean, again, I hesitate to do what I've just accused you of, but I've got primary school age children, well, one of each actually. But if she wants to wear lipstick, tough.
Yeah. No, what I mean is that.
So she wants to wear a headscarf, tough.
It's just not such a big issue for a piece of cloth to make so much.
No, I don't know that. I'm not going to argue with. And when they say, this is the line that intrigued me most, actually, to help younger pupils integrate into British society. I think I would argue, like the yarmulke and the turban, the hijab is integrated into British society. I'd have a profoundly different conversation about the niqab, but the headscarf, the turban, the yarmulke. What else is there? Oh, the nuns. What's the name of a nun's headdress?
The nuns wear. I was educated in a convent in India,
yes.
And they wear a full, top to bottom. They were covered actually,
yes.
And it's very much like what you call a burqa. But my aunts used to wear burqa. Part of my family wore it. Part of my family didn't.
Well, but they didn't cover their face, did they? So
Yes, they did.
Well, the Christian nuns covered their faces.
No, not your nuns. I'm talking about my parts of my family.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm talking about nuns.
Well, nuns are very modest anyway. They're very strict. They're very modest.
I knew a very boastful nun once.
They shall follow their religion. They're following their religion.
So why would... Because, again, like the last fellow, Mafar, you're kind of trying to have your cake and eat it. I suspect I am as well. But why would a 9-year-old go... It's all very well saying she's trying to copy her mum. You're not allowed to copy your mum. If you're going to use that as a defence, she's allowed to drive herself home from school at the age of 9. So why would a 9... Go on.
Okay, I'll tell you something. In Paris, they've banned all headscarves, all right? They banned everything.
They can't have banned headscarves in Paris.
Yes, they did.
What's the Queen going to do?
Sorry?
I thought they'd banned the veil. They banned the hijab as well.
In university, yes. A girl.
Oh, hang on. In a single university? Because I mean, my wife was in Paris last month, and I'm pretty sure she wore a headscarf. Am I lucky she didn't get arrested?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm telling you something I heard on the radio. Not this year, but a few years.
Was it
back.
on this programme?
No, not on your.
Well,
program.
then you should probably have You should probably have fact-checked it then.
Okay, I'll tell you something.
Well, you keep saying you're going to tell me something, and then you don't. You sort of say something that... Well, all right. So if you go to Paris tonight on the Eurostar, and you get off at Gare du Nord or whatever station you get off at, and you're wearing a headscarf, you think you're going to get told to take it off?
No, this was in uni.
Oh, well, make your mind up. Okay. Well, again, I can't have a crack at you for being confused, because I'm very confused myself. Maybe that's why knee-jerk binary reactions are so popular, because confusion is so unsatisfying. Listen, don't tell me so much. Give me less information, fewer facts. Stop thinking. Pick a side. Start shouting. We should ban them. Don't ban them. Ban them. Don't ban. It's kind of 50-50 for me. I think the headscarf is integrated into British society, but then I live in London. I live in the London borough of Hounslow, Leafy Chiswick. And therefore, it's a daily occurrence for me. Maybe if I lived still in, no, Kidderminster's got a mosque on the Horse Fair. Where would you have to live? Is it kind of UKIP country? You'd have to live in Thanet. Are there any people in headscarves in Thanet? Then maybe I would feel that there was a problem with integration. But Newham in East London? All right, half-time, I'm leaning towards... anti-ban. I've had a tweet from Nimco Ali, who is the country's leading campaigner against FGM, and I have to tell you, I did a very long interview with Nimco recently. You can find details on my Twitter feed. Not yet. I don't know when it's going to be released. But if she's even 10% right about what she thinks is about to happen with regard to FGM, then she deserves a Nobel Prize. And I don't say that lightly. Absolute education for me, but there appears to be genuine movement. And when she puts a date on something and says by this date it will have stopped in this many territories, and then backs it up with her arguments and her evidence. I've interviewed a lot of people over the last couple of years, and that is one of the ones that has resonated with me the most. In fact, I'd say out of all the interviews I've done recently, that and Paris Lee's, the trans woman who was photographed in Vogue, I chose to do those interviews to address my own ignorance. And it's really worked. But anyway, I mentioned that. Nimco's been in touch. You remember when Paris Lee's came in here to the studio. She says, in our attempt not to offend parents, we are limiting girls' freedoms and sexualising them as we do so. And that has swung me back again. Gary Burton's got in touch to say this is going to be a pendulum hour. He said at 11:01. I think I need some new catchphrases. It's going to be a pendulum hour, James. It's going to be one of those ones where our mind changes. And you know what the motto of this programme is? No point having a mind if it never changes. It is for fear of offending parents. Does it really limit girls' freedom? I don't know. And I'd quite like to wear a headscarf because I'm going bald. And also, if I was a girl, I suspect if I had long hair, when I had long hair, those were the days. When I had a lovely, luscious locks, it was keeping them clean that was the problem. But these are not religious considerations. Are we really limiting? Because that really chimes with me. Out of all the contributions so far, on air or online, that's my favourite. In our attempt not to offend parents, we're limiting girls' freedoms and sexualising them as we do. There's your starter for 10. Fatima's in Hackney. Fatima, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello, Fatima.
First-time caller.
You're very welcome.
So go easy on me.
Well, we'll see.
Yes. Basically, I don't believe we are limiting girls wearing headscarves.
Well, you're limiting their freedom not to wear a headscarf, aren't you?
Well, I guess it depends on the family itself. I wear a hijab. I've got a daughter who's 16. She actually wears hijab and a niqab, and that was all down to her choice. In fact, when she wanted to wear a hijab, she was in primary school age. And I was, as a mum, kind of questioned her to why she wanted to wear it.
What did she say?
And she said she wanted to do it for religious reasons. I mean,
What really? Because I'm not having that. Sorry, I wouldn't have it with any other faith either, just for the record. But that doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
What is the religious reason?
I'll explain
Thank
to you.
you.
As I see, well, I'm, as they say in our field, kind of practicing, which I don't like that term, a Muslim. So she sees me, we attend circles of knowledge, and so she was with me. And through her own, she used to say, I want to do it to please my Lord.
So when you say it was her choice, it was a choice contingent upon being told repeatedly that it's what God wants her to do.
No, it wasn't in those terms. It was about listening to role models in people in the Quran and the people of knowledge, of people surrounded by the Prophet who had...
We just said exactly the same thing with slightly different words. She was told by lots and lots of people that God wanted her to do this.
No, I wouldn't say it like that, though, because...
No, I know you wouldn't say it like that, but I wouldn't say it like you did, and we're both still right.
Right, okay. So... going back to her, so she wanted to wear it. I said, I think it's a bit too early for you, and I would like to see that you actually want to wear it for the right reasons.
What are the right reasons?
Well, for me, the right reasons is, yes, to please my Lord.
Okay. And why does it please him? What has he got against your hair?
It's got nothing against my hair.
Why does he want you to hide it,
like
then?
You were saying, it was like what you were saying about modesty.
Yeah.
About being modest.
So why doesn't God want your hair to be on show?
This will go into more technical terms, which
I'm confident. I can cope.
And I don't think I'm confident enough to kind of explain it in...
So you can't explain it, but you're confident that your daughter was exercising free choice when she chose to emulate you. There's a bit of a problem here, isn't there, Fatima?
The free choice is given that a
she did it for religious
right
reasons that you can't explain, but you're confident that her choice was free.
Yes, because I didn't force it upon her. So she had the free choice to decide what she wanted to do.
Having listened almost exclusively to lots and lots of people who told her that God wanted her to do it, but if they're anything like you, they wouldn't have been able to tell her why, except these vague terms like modesty and pleasing my God.
Also,
so which leads me to the question of why do you think God doesn't want your hair to be on display? I'd just love to know. It's not a trick question.
I would say it's the same way a nun covers her hair. Obviously to please their Lord. I mean, why do nuns cover their hair?
I don't know, actually, now you come to mention it. I presume there's some sort of... Yeah, it's a 2,000-year-old idea of how women should behave.
Yeah, so it comes down to that. I think fundamentally everything comes down to people that are religious.
Wimples. They're called wimples. I forgot what the word was. I think they're called wimples.
Sorry, I don't know what that is.
That's a nurse's veil is called it's a technical term.
Right, okay.
Fatima.
Okay. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, so I think fundamentally people that want to please their Lord, that's where it comes down to. What I'm doing with my life, is it going to please my Lord? And fundamentally, I think that's the choices we make. In terms of what you were discussing about the primary school having a ban on young children and that it shouldn't be done, personally, I think a lot of parents don't force it upon their children, girls. It's more like they kind of mimic mum.
Yeah.
And like another previous caller said, that it is a fashion trend nowadays, and when he said that, it's more pushed upon when they hit puberty. Nowadays, puberty comes in early.
It can do, but that's why we're talking about 8-year-olds, not 11-year-olds.
Okay, and now. So
even then, I mean, I think your non-point is strong, and it's odd, isn't it, how we have our own personal loyalties? Because I mean, if we're going to accept that, then I would argue that that's daft as well. But then I have in the back of my mind, I have my old teachers from primary school. I was Sister Mary Francis and Sister Catherine, and the idea that I'd tell them to take off their wimples. What I didn't know, and I've looked it up while talking to you, is that at many stages of medieval Christian culture, it was considered unseemly for a married woman to show her hair. So she would wear what is known as a wimple. It could be elaborately starched and creased, and the fashion could be employed through it, just like with a hijab today. 15th century Italian women started abandoning it. I can't help thinking that that was progress. The idea that you, as an intelligent, educated young woman living with more freedoms than perhaps anyone has enjoyed in living memory, and you're still indulging in a process that Western religions, well, Christian's not a Western religion, that Christianity considered to be a little bit backwards in the 15th century. That just worries me slightly.
But the thing is, we could have a long debate about this.
But it's always going to boil down to the idea that if you have your hair on display, you think men won't be able to control their urges, is it, or not?
No. Then what I think, by me having a hijab on, why does it change somebody else's...
I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about an 8-year-old girl.
Okay, if I come back to that, what I was saying is, to the researcher, is generally when puberty hits, that's when people kind of focus more on, right, you've hit puberty, you need to kind of cover up, because that's what it boils down to in religious terms, that when you hit puberty, you need to be more modest. Yes, in some instances, it's to prevent any...
And I hear you, and just before we go, because there's a break looming, just run me through again why boys don't have to be modest.
They do, really. Actually.
So what do they do?
Listen, there's a big
I am
difference
listening.
between religion and culture. And most
here's my question: what do boys do to display to advertise their modesty?
Right. In the Quran, it says actually God actually speaks to men before women.
Yeah.
To lower your gaze. Yeah.
So that you should be telling primary school boys to lower their gaze? Should you? What if they've got a female teacher? Are they allowed to look at the blackboard?
No. It's not just about that. It's a training period. So with the hijab as well.
No, I don't want to talk about the hijab. I want to talk about boys being modest. Just give me an example. What would be the male equivalent of the headscarf for a 9-year-old boy?
For a 9-year-old boy, I would say, I don't know, dressing more modestly, I guess.
I know.
With older men... we're
not talking about older men. We're talking about 9-year-old boys. We're using your word to describe why 9-year-old girls shouldn't be banned from wearing headscarves because of modesty and pleasing your Lord. And I'm just wondering what 9-year-old boys do to display similar modesty. And we both know what the answer is. It's just that you're pretending not to.
No, honestly, I don't know what
I'll tell you then. Naff all.
Naff all.
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Listen,
which is fine, but then that makes the integration question feel a little bit different, and the pendulum swings again. Because if you're teaching girls that they have to be modest, and you're not teaching boys the same thing, then for my money, you are flying in the face of what I would loosely and slightly shamefacedly describe as British values. I would then add the caveat that Christianity encouraged very, very, very similar behaviour, but again, I use this phrase advisedly, but it grew out of it in the 15th century, except for nuns.
With boys, I would say that they need to be taught about respecting women.
So do all boys.
It's not something... Yes. It's not more an outwardly appearance with men and boys. It is because the physical makeup of a boy and a girl is totally different. We all know that. So... I
don't want you to take this the wrong way. I would probably encourage you to stop digging now.
Okay.
Because the physical makeup of an 8-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl is of relevance to precisely nothing.
I know, it's not. But what I was trying to say is those years are like training periods. So when we say about a girl, rather than once you've hit puberty and say, right, here's a scarf, put it on now, it's more of a training period.
That's fine. But now you're dodging the question of what boys do during their training period.
Well, in those training periods, you would teach your son to respect women, to lower their gaze.
Well, teach women to respect men. Lower their gaze. That's the thing that intrigues me. What do you do if you've got a female teacher?
What do you do when you've got a female teacher? You can look at them.
But how can you lower your gaze and look at your teacher if you're sitting at a desk and she's standing up?
I know it's a tricky one to answer that one.
Well, it's not. It's impossible to answer. He can't lower his gaze and look at his teacher in primary school. So suggesting that that's some sort of comparison with telling 8-year-old girls they have to wear headscarves because modesty is demonstrably daft. Or it is the institutionalised inequality invented by men to suppress women.
I disagree with that.
Well, of course you do. Anyway, I'm going to lower my gaze now and go to the break. And there goes that pendulum again. So now it's a feminist issue for me. Now it is very simply the case of if you want to order girls, or if girls are going to be allowed to wear headscarves in primary schools because of modesty, you need to show me what boys are doing to display similar levels of modesty. And if it's going to be lowering their gaze, I cautiously suggest they ain't going to learn much. So this now looks to me, and that is why I think it's very, very important to... Actually, if you've ever wondered why I'm completely immune to the temptation in the media to sort of lazily and loosely typify Islam as terrible and negative, and why I'm something of a fetish for the kind of far-right people who do all of that, it's actually because of my knowledge of Christianity and my knowledge of what the Enlightenment was and what used to be considered commonplace within the context of Christianity. So even if you want to look at the age of Christian queens that married English monarchs back in the day, then you're looking at 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds. There's no... it's this idea that people try to claim Muslims have a monopoly upon practices that every other faith under the sun has done over the millennia. But, of course, Islam is at the front of the queue for many people of faith still doing it now. And then you speak to an educated, intelligent, lovely woman like Fatima, and you reach that point where she can't compute the facts that she's being presented with. This isn't a gotcha or a boom or a dismantling or anything like that. It's what I started doing when I was taught by Benedictine monks at school. And, well, it didn't go down very well then, to be honest with you, because even a Benedictine monk who's dedicated his life to God can't answer some fairly straightforward questions if you insist that they do. You know, I mean, the celibacy one was interesting. But in terms of sexual equality, in terms of female liberation, which again, a lot of the biggest Islamophobes in the country are also massive misogynists as well. They've got so much more in common with each other, the extremists in all camps, than they do with the rest of us. I genuinely don't understand why they can't just get on with each other and leave the rest of us alone. But that's a conversation for a different day. Back to headscarves. I think it's wrong. I think it is, to quote my friend Nimco Ali, the FGM, female genital mutilation advocate and campaigner, then it is very simply limiting girls' freedoms and sexualising them while we do it. Anne is in High Wycombe. Anne, what would you like to say?
Well, I'd like to bring up the point, and I wish we could have asked Fatima, how does she... if a child of 7 or 8 is wearing a headscarf, does that have any impact on her participation in normal school activities?
Well, you don't need to ask Fatima that. The answer's no.
Right, so that she goes swimming with the boys. The lifeguards are not required to lower their gaze.
No, the lifeguards are not required to lower their gaze. And she can go swimming if she wants. Whether or not she goes swimming with boys, I don't know. But every virgin gym in the country's got special sessions that are women only.
But, okay. But when Mum, who's...
It's like changing rooms, isn't it, in shops as well. The controversy over whether or not they should remain single-sex. I don't think it's difficult for people to accept that, is it?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean by that. I mean, obviously changing rooms, I think, should just be cubicles that one occupies privately, and then there's no issue at all.
Yeah, well, they're not, though, in swimming pools. In swimming pools, they're communal.
Indeed. Sometimes.
So,
not the one I go to.
Onwards and upwards.
Yes. But so I was going to. What I was trying to say was that the need for modesty, does that impact elsewhere in a primary school child's life? If, say, if she's got a brother, does the brother go join the running club? Does Dad take him running, and does Mum take him running, or to the gym class? And is the girl sister not allowed to participate? And I strongly suspect, because I used to see it in Dubai all the time, that the boys and the men play frisbee and have a wonderful time around the swimming pool. The female members of the family are sitting by the pool underneath an umbrella because of modesty issues. And it just makes me very sad that girls are being restricted, and it is true, in their physical activity, when the boys are more than happy and able to participate in every school activity.
And should the day arise when we're discussing PE practices in primary schools, these will be really important points. But at the moment, we're just discussing whether or not this school was right to lift a ban on this garment.
Well, yes. They're right to lift. There shouldn't be a ban on it, but there also should be no segregation in primary school in relation to any.
And again, if we're
activity.
talking about segregation in primary school, I'd be really interested in hearing these points, but we're not.
Well, I'm sorry you're not interested, but never mind. I'll try again at another time when you are interested.
Well, if I ask a question about segregation in primary schools, then you ring in and talk to me about segregation in primary schools. If I ask a question about headscarf bans, just talk to me about headscarf bans. Should parents be free to choose what their children can and can't wear in school?
No, they shouldn't, because it's.
So if the school says that they're compulsory, then every child should have to wear one.
Every child, including the boys.
Well, we don't do that with other uniform items, do we?
I don't know what you mean. What other?
Well, we don't order boys to wear skirts.
Well, I don't think there should be skirts in primary schools. I think everyone should either wear trousers or shorts.
Okay.
I don't see the need for skirts. I think it's an outmoded concept, personally.
Have a lovely day. It's coming up to 12 noon. Down with skirts! Down with skirts! That's a slightly unfortunate turn of phrase. All gone a bit Donald Trump. The light relief that I have reserved for you this Monday is a tale of a man who had a gold watch worth £25,000 delivered to his home by mistake after a courier mix-up. He was arrested after he decided to keep it. And it's astonishing how nuanced morality can be, because we did this. We knocked this one about in the office before coming on air. And some people have quite odd approaches to moral questions, and yet absolutely scorched earth views when it comes to certain other issues. So for me, this is a grey area. But for my old producer, who I was chatting to earlier, it's not a grey area at all. Although she did keep a plate that was delivered to her flat once in error. So I don't know whether she practices what she preaches. I would like... This is going to sound really odd. I would like to think that I'd keep it, but I don't think I would. But that's stupid, because usually you're supposed to like to think that you'd do the right thing, but being honest enough to think that you wouldn't. I'd like to think that I'd keep it, because a 25 grand watch would be a right old bonus. But I don't think my conscience would let me. I think I know my wife wouldn't let me. We put in an insurance claim once for some jewellery that had gone missing. And the insurance claim went through, and then we found that the jewellery turned up. We thought it had disappeared when we were moving house. I explained all of this to the insurers, and it was a good few grand, and I think the cheque was in the post, or it was certainly about to be a money transfer, and the day before it arrived, we found the jewellery, and there was a tiny little bit of me that said, well, no harm done. And then, obviously, penny dropped, and I realised I'd be committing quite a serious crime. And that is what's ended up to this bloke. He's ended up with a 14-week suspended jail term. But I just have a sense, and you could prove me wrong by leaving me hanging out to dry in the most undignified fashion, I just have a sense that this is an interesting topic of conversation. So that is up next. Before that, the very vexed question of primary school headscarves. And I'm afraid this argument that young girls, little girls, want to cover their hair because mummy doesn't really wash with me, because why does mummy? To which the answer appears to be religious reasons, to which I say, what religious reasons? And inevitably the word modesty appears. To which I say, where's the male requirement for similar levels of modesty? And really everything begins to fall apart at that point. So this is a profoundly unequal practice, and that's why the primary school banned it. And I think they were right. Amal is in Brent. Amal, what would you like to say?
Hello, hi James.
Hello.
This is my first time on air, and can I just say you are one of my favourite presenters, so do take it easy on me.
There's not necessarily a link
I'm
between
joking,
those
I'm
two.
really joking.
There's two
I'm
observations.
joking.
Thank you, though.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I too have a daughter at primary school. This might shock you. She is 4 and she also wears the hijab, but it's not that I want her to wear the hijab for religious reasons, because she is too young to understand the spiritual, requirements of wearing the hijab. I do it for practical reasons. I'm going to be truthfully honest. I do it because the weather is cold. She usually loses her hat and her scarf. So I thought, okay, I'll get her a one-piece hijab. That's why she wears it. However, she enjoys wearing it. She usually chooses her hijab. She likes them to look glittery, etc. And the primary school doesn't have any issue with that. However, the issue which I have is that we live in a plural society, of which there are many religions, of which, various individuals from different faith backgrounds wear, a variety of religious dress.
Yeah.
And I know in primary schools, it's not that the hijab of which is only worn. You've got the kippah, you have, young Sikh boys who wear the turbans. But why are we only talking about the hijab and that it's considered as sexualizing, young children?
Because of the reasons that we're given for it, and that the prominence of the word modesty in any explanation. So no one claims that Sikh men have to wear turbans in order to, tackle the goatish thoughts of Sikh women.
Okay, as a Muslim, I believe that it's a form of expressing identity. You're able to tell that I am a Muslim, a follower of the Islamic faith, because of the fact that I wear the hijab. I choose to wear the hijab, and I want the world to know with confidence that I am a follower and I am content with my faith, and this is a way of me expressing that.
But again, we're talking about primary schools where everybody knows.
Yes, I understand that. I understand that. But what I'm saying to you is, different Muslims will have different understandings of, why they want their young children to wear the hijab or not. But I don't see why it is considered as sexualizing young children when you've got other, things within society that are sexualizing children, which are more of a concern for children at school, whether they be primary school.
This is called whataboutery. This is whataboutery. Why are we talking about headscarves? Because lots of really bad stuff happens to children that has nothing to do with headscarves.
I'm sorry. What I'm saying to you is, I don't think this word sexualising young children. I think young primary school children, maybe parents, Muslim parents, put forward this view that, we want our children to, wear the hijab because we want them to dress modestly. But I don't believe that these parents have a view that our young children, if they wear the hijab or not, it's because we want them to
tell me
protect
what
them from sexual
what does
predators.
modesty mean?
Modesty covers a range of things within Islam. It's about your character. First and foremost, it's about how you treat your fellow human being, your neighbour.
No, okay? I'm talking about in the context of a headscarf, obviously, Amal.
Okay, so the hijab. So with this phrase that it's a way of expressing modesty.
Yes.
It's not just the hijab.
No, but that's the bit we're talking about now. That's the bit.
It's also about clothing.
That's the bit we're talking about now, is the hijab. So explain to me what modesty means in the context of a child wearing a headscarf.
So my daughter, I would hope that...
No, you've kind of explained to me that she's not wearing it for reasons of modesty. She's wearing it... Do you know what I thought you were going to say?
Yes.
I thought you were going to say there's loads of knits at her nursery, so we've decided to put her in a hijab as a sort of last guard again, because I'd be all for that, but you didn't.
She doesn't wear it indoors.
And she doesn't wear it for reasons of modesty either, really, in the sense that we mean. So I'm not going to let you off the hook on this. You know how it works. Why would modesty apply to a 9-year-old girl in a headscarf?
It can't apply to a 9-year-old girl in a headscarf.
So why is she wearing it?
That's my view. She's wearing it because it's if parents choose, and I'm going to give you my answer. This is my view.
Yes.
Okay, so parents want their children. They want the best for their children. As a Muslim, I believe that the best for my child is to grow up in following Islam. Now, she wants to, at a later point when she is well aware of wider society, she has knowledge of other beliefs and backgrounds. If she decides, no, actually, this is not a reality for me, and I want to make the decision that I don't want to wear the hijab, there is no compulsion in faith. That's a reality. We are taught within Islam.
But I haven't asked about... I've asked what modesty means.
What does modesty mean? Now, what I believe that you're trying to equate the hijab to is modesty, because it's not just modesty.
No, just the modesty bit. What does modesty mean?
Okay, modesty attached to the hijab or modesty in general?
Well, ideally attached to the hijab, but this is the 4th time I've asked for that, so I'll take a more general one if that's actually going to get me somewhere.
Okay, so modesty, wearing the hijab allows, I believe, in my view, allows young people to be aware that, I've got a certain covering over my head. That, therefore, because it's on my head...
To be fair, so do dealy boppers. It's modesty, isn't it, that we're talking about?
I haven't finished. Can you allow me to finish?
Of course I will, yeah, as long as you answer the question I'm asking.
Yeah, I'll try my best.
Go on then.
So wearing the hijab allows, as a young person, okay, I have the hijab, I have to behave in a certain way. And when I say behave in a certain way, I'm not talking about in terms of restricting, people within, or young people in terms of their freedom.
Don't tell me what you're not talking about. Tell me what you are talking about.
What do you mean? Sorry, I'm not...
I want to know what modesty means. You're telling me what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean the restrictive behaviour. It doesn't mean that people have to do this or do that. What does it mean?
So I think it sounds like the question you're asking me is you want me to go towards the direction of it means covering your hair, not allowing males to have, No,
I don't. I want you to tell me what you think. Again, you've told me what it doesn't mean, and now you're telling me what you think I want you to do. I just want you to tell me what modesty means.
Okay, for me, modesty is not just about the hijab. It's about how you act as a human being, your behaviour first and foremost.
Yeah.
Then other things are as important, which is your outward appearance. So
but we're talking about the hijab.
Modestly wearing the hijab.
Yes.
Wearing the hijab. So
how does it enhance your modesty or enforce your modesty? How does it make you more modest?
Okay,
Two people,
so
one in a hijab, one not in a hijab. Why is the one in the hijab more modest?
Okay, research has shown that, and this is scientific research has shown that as human beings, we are more attracted by someone through the appearance of their hair. Please research this. You can find evidence that supports this view. I'm not talking about in terms of young children. I'm just talking about in terms of what we find attractive.
But this is the thing that you said I was trying to make you do that wasn't fair.
But you're asking me what does modesty mean in terms of my view of modesty, and you want an answer in terms of why the hijab.
Why is that girl there more modest than that girl there? Because one's got a headscarf on and one hasn't, and you're saying because men are more likely to fancy the one without the headscarf on, but that's not about the women, that's about the men.
Yes, and that's just biology. So
well, it's not, to be honest with you, because it doesn't. It's not going to.
It's a reality. We can't.
So because hair is arousing, headscarves are modest.
So that's one of the most
I thought you might contradict me on that.
We might find attractive in someone's hair. But can I just please finish my point? Thank you, James. You're still my favourite presenter.
You're still my favourite Amal.
Thank you.
That includes Clooney.
Thank you. So just quickly, we're saying that that's one of the most prominent features of which we might find attractive in the opposite sex. That's not the only thing. Another thing is it does give me liberation. So I'm talking about it in terms of why I wear the hijab. I'm not talking about it in terms of young children now. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
So I wear the hijab because I think it does liberate me. It allows me, just like when I'm going to use the analogy, if you go into an interview and it's for a prominent position, okay, you're going to dress a certain way in order for you to please your, the interviewee, etc. and so forth. I know it's probably the worst analogy to make here, but the hijab is considered. There's so many elements of the hijab. You've got to study it. I think, and I believe that within the West, we do tend to have a Eurocentric view of, I believe, Islam, but we're not going to.
Well, let's move it out of the Eurocentric. I'm going to have to move on because of the break. But before we do that, because I take on board what you say about being Eurocentric. Why do you think Iranian women are campaigning for the right to remove theirs?
Then they're in their right to remove it. I'm not saying that because
But it's not. It's just. I just wonder: are they being Eurocentric in Iran?
No, I don't believe they are being Eurocentric.
So why do they want to take it off? If it's Eurocentric to suggest that it's inappropriate, why are Iranian women?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that we have quite an ignorant view about the hijab. In order for you to understand the hijab, you've got. I mean, there is so much literature about it.
I don't need literature. I've learnt from you. It's about modesty, and it's because there's science that says men are aroused by women's hair. I don't want to misrepresent you.
Yeah, I'm trying to give you, because your question was directed at why is the hijab, for me, I don't just see it as a form of modesty. I see it as a form of liberation, as a form of...
I get the liberation bit. I think if you want to discourage unwanted attention from men, I could see perhaps how a hijab could be construed as liberation, but I think that oddly you're encouraging the men's behaviour. You're acknowledging it, allowing it. If I've learned anything this year from the Me Too movement, it's that men need to change, not women. And unfortunately, the hijab seems to me to be a really powerful example of how men's inability to behave in a civilised fashion makes it contingent upon women to adjust their behaviour accordingly. But I suspect that's the point at which the two twains separate on this. Amal, thanks ever so much. Seriously, it's 12:18. Last word on that, which really, I don't know whether, Sid, you heard my attempt to explain it as the difference between clean light and dirty light. It needs a little bit of work, that model. But Sid writes in response to the conversations that we've been having about headscarves and children. It's why the current climate's so harmful, the intense hostility towards Muslims being exploited by conservative voices in our own communities to shut down even legitimate concerns raised by peeps who aren't coming from a bad place but are trying to look out for young girls as Islamophobic. And that's the best possible distillation of what I tried to explain quite clumsily myself. Because it cuts both ways, you know. You get absolutely aerated by certain types of crime when they're committed by a brown man, and you're pretty much silent when they're committed by a white man, or indeed when a white man seeking to be elected president of America boasts about committing those kinds of crimes. Then you are helping people in the Muslim community who are repressive and ultra-conservative. It's almost as if the extremists in both camps actually want the same thing. They just want to be in charge of making sure that everybody has to do it.